Imagine, like, casually leaning against a 2,000-year-old Roman pillar while you're sipping your morning coffee, right?
Yeah.
And then you just check your phone to see if the wind is going to be strong enough to physically flip a car today.
Yeah. Which sounds like a totally bizarre fever dream to most people.
Yeah.
But in Croatia, I mean, that is just a perfectly normal Tuesday.
It really is. And welcome to the deep dive, everyone. Looking over all the research we have for today, it hit me that you just cannot treat this country like your standard, simple beach holiday.
Oh, absolutely not. It totally shatters the expectations people usually bring to, European travel destinations.
Right.
Like you think of a place, you picture a sunny beach, you go relax, but Croatia just actively defies that kind of simplicity.
Because well, honestly, it's an architectural and cultural lasagna. That's the best way I can describe it. You have this layer upon layer of history where you can literally see the strata of different empires just, stacked right on top of each other.
That's a great way to put it. The lasagna metaphor works perfectly.
So our mission for this deep dive is basically to decode Croatia. Not just looking at the picturesque postcard spots, but really understanding it as this complex, super resilient crossroads, where East meets West, ancient meets modern.
And crucially, where a highly dramatic natural environment dictates basically absolutely everything about how people live.
Exactly. Because to understand that layered history, the lasagna, we have to uncover the mechanics behind it.
Yeah.
Like, why does this country look and sound so distinctly fractured, but also somehow cohesive?
Right, because the history there isn't trapped behind velvet ropes in some museum. It's the literal foundation of the present. And to get the people, you really have to first understand the extreme, uncompromising land they live on.
Right. If history is the lasagna, geography is the pan it was baked in.
Mm.
And wow, the geography of this place is just wild.
It is. It effectively chopped the country into 3 totally distinct terrains.
Which created these massive natural borders. It honestly made me wonder how anyone ever managed to unify the place at all. So first up, we've got the mountains, which make up like 40% of the country.
Yeah, and we're not talking about gentle rolling hills here.
No, definitely not. We're talking about the Velebit Range.
Yeah.
And they have these bizarre, jagged limestone rock formations the locals call kukovi.
And those kukovis are just the perfect visual representation of how harsh the terrain is. They're a product of this geological phenomenon called karst.
Right, karst, which is essentially just highly porous limestone, right?
Exactly. So over millennia, acidic rain just dissolves the rock. It creates these deep underground rivers, massive cave systems, and those strange wind-sculpted crags up on the surface.
It sounds kind of alien.
It really does. And because the water drains straight through the porous rock, the surface is often completely dry. It makes it incredibly difficult to traverse.
But despite that, the forests up there are super dense, right? Like thick pine, fir, and beech.
Yeah, and they harbor some very serious wildlife. I mean, it's one of the few places left in Europe where you have wild populations of brown bears, wolves, wild boar, and chamois just thriving.
Okay, so you have these rugged, bear-filled mountains. But then you drop down from those mountains, head east, and hit the Pannonian Plain, specifically a region called Slavonia.
Which is a complete 180-degree turn geographically.
Totally. Suddenly you are out of the jagged rocks and into this incredibly fertile breadbasket. And it's bordered by 3 massive rivers, the Danube, the Drava, and the Sava.
And that region had a resource that was just as valuable as its wheat, the Slavonian oak.
Oh, the oak. I found this fascinating.
Right. Historically, this whole area was just covered in these magnificent ancient oak forests. And the wood was prized all across Europe because it had this extraordinary strength and resilience to water rot.
Which made it perfect for building ships.
Exactly. But harvesting it was an intense logistical nightmare. You had to fell these massive giants out in the eastern plains and then figure out how to transport them.
Which meant using complex river networks or hauling them over those terrible mountain passes we just talked about.
Just to get them to the coastal shipyards, yeah. The wood was in such high demand that it was actually used to build the mighty shipping fleets of both Venice and Dubrovnik.
I love that detail so much. Like, Venice totally ruled the seas, but their boats were fundamentally Croatian.
They literally grew the Adriatic's naval dominance right there in the soil of the Croatian plains.
Unbelievable. Okay, so that brings us to the third terrain, which is the coast and the islands. And the mainland coast alone is nearly 600 kilometers long.
But when you actually factor in the deeply indented shoreline and the hundreds of islands, from big ones like Kirk and Crest to these tiny rocky outcrops, It just explodes.
Yeah, to over 2,000 kilometers of coastline. And this coastal geography creates this crazy split personality in the climate, doesn't it?
It really does. It's a dramatic microclimate division, completely driven by the mountains. So on the exposed sides of the coast and the islands, you have the Bora.
The Bora wind, the car-flipping wind.
Yes, exactly. It is this fierce, violently cold northeast wind. It basically happens when cold, dense air builds up behind the Velebit Mountains, and then it just falls off the mountain peaks.
Accelerating down to the sea at like hurricane speeds.
Right. It relentlessly batters the coast. But then, because the islands act as a buffer, the sheltered sides of those exact same landmasses have these tranquil, sun-drenched Mediterranean pockets.
That's the postcard view.
Yeah.
Where you find the massive lavender fields, especially on the island of Stivar, plus, centuries-old olive groves and vineyards.
Yeah, it's a total contrast. And nestled within all this extreme geography are the national parks, which honestly feel like completely different planets.
Like Teclanica, right in the harsh karst of the mountains. But then you have the Plitvice Lakes. Plitvice is just staggering.
Oh, absolutely. Plitvice is this unbelievable sequence of cascading waterfalls and 16 terraced lakes.
But the crazy part is, it's not just water falling over static rocks.
Mm-hmm.
It's alive, basically.
Yeah, it is a constantly evolving biological process. The lakes there are formed by travertine or tufa barriers.
Okay, break that down for us. What is a tufa barrier?
Basically, as the mineral-rich water flows over the limestone, it picks up calcium carbonate. And when that water interacts with specific types of moss and algae in the rivers, the calcium crystallizes.
Wait, so it's literally building living rock dams.
Yes. They grow about a centimeter a year, so the waterfalls are constantly shifting and remaking themselves based on how the rock actually grows.
That is insane. So seeing how extreme this geographical split is, with the harsh mountains effectively walling off the sunny islands from the fertile inland plains, it makes total sense why Croatia was such an easy puzzle for different empires to card up.
Precisely. The geography dictated the history.
Because a single army couldn't realistically hold the plains, cross those crazy karst mountains, and defend 2,000 kilometers of coastline all at the same time.
Right. Those immense natural borders allowed completely different foreign powers to occupy different zones of the country simultaneously.
Which sets the stage for part 2 of our deep dive, the architecture. Because that geographical fracturing created one of the most wildly diverse architectural landscapes in all of Europe.
You can literally read the history of the continent directly in the local stone.
Yeah, I was looking at the map of Diocletian's palace in Split, and it blew my mind. It's not some fenced-off, sterile archaeological site.
No, people are actively living in it.
Yes. You have locals hanging their laundry over 3rd century Roman walls. I mean, the Illyrians were settling the area around 1200 BC. But the visible architecture really kicks off with the Romans.
Like the massive 1st century arena in Pula, which is one of the largest surviving amphitheaters in the world.
And then, Diocletian's retirement palace, which spans over 7 acres. It's the living, breathing core of modern Split.
It just fundamentally changes how you view ancient history when a Roman emperor's courtyard is now just a bustling cafe square,
Totally.
Yeah.
But the Romans were just the first major layer of the lasagna. After the Western Roman Empire fell, the Byzantine influence swept down the coast.
A prime example being the 6th century Euphratean Basilica in Poran. It's renowned for these incredibly intricate mosaics set against striking gold backgrounds.
And they didn't just use gold to show off how rich they were.
No, it was super practical for the time. In the dim, candlelit interiors of these 6th century churches, the gold tesserae captured and reflected ambient light.
So the religious figures looked like they were glowing.
Exactly, appearing illuminated from within. It perfectly reflects that era when the Eastern Empire had this profound cultural influence over the Adriatic.
But then the Venetians arrived, and they fundamentally reshaped the coastline.
Yeah, they ruled the coast for 400 years, from the Middle Ages deep into the late 18th century.
And they left a massive legacy, a lot of Venetian Gothic and Renaissance architecture. Like if you look at the Cathedral of St. Mark in Corachula or St. James in Nibenik, you feel like you've just teleported to a piazza in Venice.
You really do.
Yeah.
But while the Venetians were building these elegant Gothic cathedrals on the coast, you look inland and it is a totally different story.
Because of the geography again.
Exactly. That geographic divide reveals itself in the stone. Inland Croatia, especially after the Ottoman Turks were repelled in the late 17th century, fell heavily under Austrian and German influence.
Ah, the Habsburgs.
Right. They essentially initiated this massive rebuilding campaign. Towns like Varaždin and the upper town of Zagreb were completely rebuilt in the Baroque style.
With the expansive, highly ornate facades.
Yes, these richly decorated Baroque facades and grand Catholic churches. They used them to visually reassert Western European Christian dominance over the regions the Ottomans had held.
So you literally just drive a few hours and you transition from Venetian elegance straight into Austro-Hungarian grandeur.
It's incredible, but, the local artisans weren't just passively accepting these colonizing blueprints.
Right, they weren't acting as a blank canvas for the empires.
Not at all. And that is the true genius of Croatian architecture. The local master stonemasons took the native limestone, that exact porous karst rock we discussed, and they completely mastered it.
Subverting the expectations of the foreign rulers.
Exactly. Take Master Radovan in the 13th century. He carved the Romanesque doors of the Trurgar Cathedral.
With the Adam and Eve figures, right?
Yes, he included these incredibly deep, expressive, almost raw figures of Adam and Eve that totally bucked the strict, rigid European traditions of the time.
And then there's Juraj Dalmatinac, who worked on the cathedral in Benek.
Oh, Dalmatia is the perfect example. He was actually trained in Venice. But when he came back to Dalmatia, he didn't just lazily copy Venetian styles.
He invented that unique interlocking stone technique.
Right. For the Cremona Cathedral, he figured out how to build the massive stone vaults and the dome completely without mortar.
No mortar at all, just interlocking limestone.
Just precision interlocking slabs of native rock. He took the colonizers' architectural language and completely outdid them using local knowledge.
Wow. Okay, but while the grand cathedrals tell the story of wealthy empires and powerful bishops, there is another side to this cultural survival. What about the everyday people?
Yeah, the peasants and woodcutters.
Right. Their story isn't captured in grand stone cathedrals. It's on canvas, glass, and plaster.
It's a vital pivot in understanding the country. Grand architecture shows us the ambitions of the ruling class. But visual art, particularly localized forms, give us a window into the lived experience of the broader population.
And the art gets incredibly intense. For example, Vincent Oddkasva's 15th century frescoes, specifically in this tiny Istrian church of St. Mary in Barum.
Ah, the Dance of Death.
Yes. He painted this piece that shows everyone from powerful popes, wealthy merchants, kings, all the way down to humble peasants, marching together in a line, holding hands with skeletons.
In the context of the 15th century, that was wildly bold. You had plagues sweeping the continent and a brutal feudal system in place.
So this fresco was like a deeply subversive equalizer. It basically declared, I don't care how much Venetian gold or Austrian land you own, you are exactly equal to the poorest farmer when the Grim Reaper comes.
It was a stark, rebellious reminder of mortality that completely leveled the strict social hierarchies. And, that fiercely independent artistic spirit just echoes down the centuries.
Like when we move into the 20th century. The sculptural boom, led by Ivan Mitrović.
Arguably Croatia's most famous modern artist, yeah. He blended classical techniques with very raw, nationalistic themes. He eventually even donated his Zagreb home and extensive works back to the state.
But I think the most unique and telling artistic movement is the Holbein School of Naive Art in the 1930s.
Oh, absolutely.
The Holbein School is fascinating to me. It honestly feels like an early analog version of citizen journalism for the working class.
That's a really good analogy.
Because it was founded by a formally trained artist, Kristo Hajdušić, who basically just turned his back on the elite academic art world. He went to a rural village and encouraged amateur village painters, farmers, laborers like Ivan Generalic to paint their actual reality.
And they didn't paint religious icons or, idealized landscapes for rich patrons.
No, they focused purely on the harsh, vibrant reality of peasant life.
Ugh.
The woodcutters freezing in the winter, the village drunks, the grueling farm labor.
And the medium they chose to use was just as important as the subject matter. They predominantly used reverse glass painting.
Right, painting on the back of a pane of glass.
Yeah.
But I have to ask, why glass? Was it just because canvas was too expensive for peasants?
Well, affordability was part of it, sure, but it was actually incredibly practical. Think about a peasant cottage in the 30s. It was dark, often filled with soot and smoke from open hearths.
Oh, so canvas would just get ruined.
Quickly ruined, yeah. But painting on the reverse side of glass protected the actual pigment from that smoky, harsh environment. And as a bonus, the glass itself gave the colors this incredible luminosity.
It made their everyday struggles look incredibly vivid.
Exactly. It made the rural reality pop.
And they completely bypassed the elite galleries. They broadcasted this gritty reality directly to the global stage. I mean, their work eventually reached the Venice Biennale and had massive exhibitions in South America.
They forced the world to look at the peasants. For centuries, the coast was focused on replicating grand Venetian religious art. But the inland Halibine school turned the lens entirely inward.
It proved the true heart of the culture was in the land and the everyday people.
And importantly, that deep-seated dedication to local identity isn't just some relic trapped in a glass painting. It is highly active today. This is living history.
We see that everywhere,
Yeah.
even in the dialects. The Constitution officially recognizes Standard Croatian, but locally, people fiercely hold on to 3 base dialects.
Depending on the region, yeah. Tokovski, Chikovski, and Kakavski.
And I love this. Those names aren't just random, are they?
No, they are literally named after the word for what in each specific region. So depending on where you are, if you want to say what, you say shito, chi, or kaj.
Language is the ultimate anchor of a community's identity. The fact that these distinct dialects survived centuries of outside empires trying to standardize them is amazing.
And again, the extreme geography we talked about earlier really helped. Those isolating mountains and remote islands actually protected these dialects from being erased by centralized authorities.
You see that same localized pride fiercely defended in the towns themselves. Look at Hvar. Founded by ancient Greeks in the 4th century BC, but one of its coolest architectural sites is the Teivereldi.
Right, the Renaissance fortified house,
Yeah.
built in the 16th century by the local poet Petar Hektorovich.
But he didn't just build a pretty seaside mansion to flex his wealth. He engineered a self-sustaining sanctuary designed specifically to shelter the local citizens from brutal pirate attacks and Ottoman raids.
It had an enclosed seawater fish pond and a dovecote for birds. So if the town was besieged, the people locked inside would have a renewable food source.
It's literal architecture built for community survival.
Exactly. And if you move far inland to Slavonia, you find a totally different but equally strong local identity. Towns like Akovo host the Akovashi Vazovi.
That massive folklore festival in July, right?
Yeah, dedicated to equestrian traditions and their incredibly intricate local embroidery. Or Ilok, the easternmost city perched above the Danube, defined by its ancient wine cellars and the 17th century Odescalchi manor.
Then you have coastal cities like Zadar, which masterfully blend everything together. You can stand in the ancient 9th century Church of St. Donat, walk a few steps, and interact with totally modern, bold public art.
Like the installations by architect Nikola Basic. He built the sea organ,
which uses the natural motion of the Adriatic waves pushing air through underwater tubes to play this haunting, randomized music.
And right next to it is the Greeting to the Sun, this massive solar-powered light installation. They don't bulldoze the old for the new, they just layer it into the lasagna.
And they actively commemorate their history through these fierce, highly physical reenactments. In Croatia, they perform the Moricheka sword dance.
Which is a really complex, rhythmic battle simulation.
And inland, in Sinj, they hold the Sinjska Alka. It's a spectacular equestrian jousting tournament. Riders at a full gallop try to put their lance through a tiny metal ring.
Both of these are deeply rooted traditions commemorating historical battles against the Ottoman Turks. And the thing is, they aren't putting on costumes just to amuse backpackers.
No, they are physically keeping the memory of their historical survival alive. Which brings up a very modern and very serious point of resilience. After declaring independence from Yugoslavia in the 1990s, Croatia suffered a brutal, devastating conflict.
It was awful. It heavily damaged ancient infrastructure, caused massive population shifts, and basically halted the economy.
But rebuilding wasn't just about pouring new concrete. It was an assertion of this deeply rooted identity. Today, the culture and the tourism have incredibly robustly rebounded.
They really have.
But it forces a question for you, the listener, as a modern traveler. How does a country balance the profound weight of all this intense, bloody history with being this chic, highly sought-after tourist hotspot?
It is a super delicate balance, but the key is understanding who the culture is actually for. For Croatians, the regional dialects, the sword dances, the reverse glass painting, they survived the communist era, they survived the brutal conflicts of the 90s, and they survived centuries of foreign rule.
Because they are the anchor of the people.
Exactly. Tourism is economically vital, sure, but The preservation of their identity always comes first. They live their history every single day, whether there is a camera pointing at them or not.
Well, we have covered incredible ground today. We've mapped out Croatia through its rugged karst mountains and its sun-drenched, lavender-scented islands.
We've explored how local stonemasons took the blueprints of Romans, Venetians, and Austrians and used native limestone to carve an identity entirely their own.
And we've looked at the soulful, vibrant peasant art of the Hellebean school, painting their truths on glass, and celebrated the living, breathing traditions that simply refuse to fade away.
The essential takeaway here is that visiting, or even just studying, Croatia is not about appreciating beautiful beaches. It's witnessing a literal masterclass in cultural survival and synthesis.
Seeing how a people can sit perfectly at the chaotic crossroads of conquering empires for millennia, absorb those impacts, and emerge with a culture that is vibrantly, uniquely their own.
It really is a masterclass.
It is. And it leaves me with a final thought for you to chew on. Throughout this deep dive, we've marveled at how seamlessly Croatians have integrated 2,000-year-old Roman ruins and 15th century Venetian palaces right into their modern daily lives.
Turning imperial courtyards into bustling cafes.
Exactly. They didn't trap their history under glass. So it makes you wonder, thousands of years from now, when future generations are building their own cultural lasagna, which of our modern, everyday structures will be repurposed, lived inside, and cherished by the people of the future?